Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour on this Independence Week. I'm Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, how's it going on the East Coast, my friend? Cheers.
Pleasant weather, pleasant time. It's a good week for America's birthday, so I'm looking forward to it.
As am I. So, we are a few days past this year's International Fight Week, UFC 317. I was privileged and lucky enough to be able to be out in Vegas for it during a nice weekend out there. I mean, right from the start, I'm going to say it was one of the most fun events I've been to in a long time. It's been a long time, and it kind of rejuvenated some of my enjoyment of the fights. It was a rarity. There was not a single fight on this entire card where I was like, I think it's time to get up and take a walk, or, now's the time to go to the bathroom. Every fight from start to finish pretty much had me intrigued. The slowest fight of the night was Pantoja, and that was just him dominating for a round and a half before he got the finish. And that wasn't even boring. That was just total domination. I was appreciating what I was seeing with that. So, from start to finish, massively enjoyable card, sold out T-Mobile Arena. Just a good night overall for the UFC. I think a lot of the storylines that they kind of needed to fall together really kind of did for them, and allows for a little bit of a future.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that because it's funny to me. You know how they called? I mean, I know we're going to get to the fights and all that stuff, but I do know about like the thing with Paddy Pimblett coming to face off with Topuria, and it was kind of something that Dana White addressed in the post-fight press conference. He was like, if I was still in the cage, that wouldn't have happened. I guess that's not a fight that he wants. And then Pimblett a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday? Apparently he might be fighting Justin Gaethje or something, and it's just like. It's just you're talking about the storylines for the future. It looks like they're all over the place. And I had this discussion with a training partner of mine last night because we always talk about the fights. Shout out to Jalen, who's one of my favorite people to roll with. But he was just kind of like, we were talking, and I was just like, I said to him, I remember the thing Michael Venom Page said when he went up to that. I forget who he fought when he went up to 185, and he won. And then he made the comment of how 170 or 185, he's like, all these divisions are up for the taking because there's not really a guy there anymore. Like Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, like all these guys that were like staples, and like there's nobody like that right now. And I know with recency bias with everyone who just picked, defended one titles. I don't know if I can solidly say that there's still. Like, it seems like every division's up for grabs to me.
I don't necessarily agree. So you mentioned Paddy Pimblett and Topuria. I think Topuria is here to stay. I don't think there's any denying it at this point. I mean, I've been to two of his last three fights. I saw him put out Volkanovski cold, and I saw him put out Oliveira cold. Two guys that are arguably perhaps the GOATs in their weight divisions, depending on who you might be speaking to. Not to mention he went up in weight and flatlined Oliveira in a matter of seconds, really.
Yeah.
The Pimblett thing, truth be told, I didn't wait around for him to get in there. The fights ended. Good night. For me, it's worth it to not stand for 35 minutes trying to get down the escalators from the nosebleeds. So I didn't wait around to see who came into the cage after that. I wasn't all that interested in that per se. But I do think that Pimblett brings a lot to the table at this point. And I talked bad about him a couple years ago when I thought he was kind of being kind of a bratty kid. But I think he's matured, and I think that he brings I like what he brings to the table. I like if I could sit down with Paddy Pimblett and have a private conversation, I would say, do everything you're doing. Just don't get arrested. Don't go rape anybody. Don't go out. You know what I mean? Like, you have a chance to kind of be the fun-go-lucky guy that could really help the sport out. No, everybody would love it if he was dancing around laughing and clapping his hands and the solid crowd singing and stuff. It's kind of the fun parts of McGregor without the drama. And if he can do that, then he has a chance to become a star. And I don't think he beats Topuria. Anyways, but I do think that he brings a level right now that we don't have. And,
Yeah.
and that's going to go into an observation that I made that I might as well go into right now. So
And
historically,
I agree with you about the matchup. I think Topuria beats him too.
so a reason why I think somebody like Paddy Pimblett is so important is from what I witnessed this weekend. And I'm not saying, and I didn't get a chance to walk around the entire arena and take a total count, but I did point it out to 3 people that I was with, and they all agreed with me extremely, 100%. Historically, when I would go to a UFC event, you could probably agree with this. Would you agree that the crowd is generally probably 70% male, maybe 30% female?
Yeah.
So is that fair?
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah.
I mean, give or take a couple percents, but fairly close,
Yeah.
probably.
Maybe more women are coming now, but
No, that's the
it's
point I'm going to make. I would say it was 90-10 at this event.
Mm.
I looked around in my section, and I could count on one hand the amount of women in my section.
Mm.
And I pointed it out to the female in my group, and I said, just an observation, and I don't know if I'm just being wrong, but are there way less females here? And she didn't even have to look around the arena before she looked at me and said, absolutely. She goes, I've never been to an event where there were so few females. And I think it has to do with the star power thing we've brought up in the past. My whole life growing up, I had parties at my house, and obviously those days are gone because the pay-per-view party thing has faded, and I'm older now and don't have as many friends. But growing up, the girls knew Chuck Liddell. The girls knew Matt Hughes. The females knew Conor McGregor. They, and I feel like we're getting to a point where Ilia Topuria, while he's a star, doesn't necessarily sell to the female audience. Now, maybe if they promoted him correctly, he would. But you don't have the Ronda Rousey. You don't have even like Frank Mir and stuff. You had names that carried on that you could talk to people in the streets about, or women in the streets, and they would recognize those names. Randy Couture. I don't see that anymore. I see less of it per se at this event. So maybe that's a one-off. Maybe it was just the section I was sitting in, but it was definitely looking around, and it was looking around going, okay, like I don't see any. Like there's 30 people standing up in that section, and 28 of them are men. It was one of those things, and it was, and that's might just be where we're headed right now. But I did notice that, and I thought that was an odd observation. The other thing I noticed for International Fight Weeks, and you could agree with this too, because I think you probably partook in this. A lot of people used to go to International Fight Week just to party for the weekend, right?
Oh yeah.
Not go to the fights, right? Just be there for the festivities.
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't meet anybody. I didn't meet a single person who was there that didn't go to the fights.
When I went, and maybe it was because of, again, I still get press releases, but we had better access. I still have a freaking account with the UFC. I just don't get approved for anything. It's like automatic rejection when I log in, but it is. I showed it to Jalen too, like a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, yeah, because I wanted to do the when Turkey and Dana were at the UFC's handling the Canelo Crawford thing, and I was like, oh, I'll try to get and cover that. As soon as I logged in, rejected. I was like, okay, cool. But it wasn't like that back then. And back in 2015, I just shared the post with the McGregor. The 2015 was the last good international fight week, the one that you're referencing. And I remember I would get an email. You know how they put out the list? I mean, they put that out on social media, like here's all the things, and those are all just stand in line and take pictures with fighters, like things. But you would get this PDF file back when before it was pre-Endeavor, and we'd get this PDF file, and you'd have a list of all these like parties and things going on at other properties, and and that was like the reason that the International Fight Week, like the 2015 International Fight Week was probably the best time in my life, like that I've ever had. And that was my second time going to Vegas. I've been a few times, and I haven't been back since the UFC got bought by Endeavor. So what does that tell you? It's just like they did something to it. But yeah, no, it used to be like, did we meet at that? No, we met at the 200.
We met in the concourse at 200, which that year wasn't terrible either. Personally, it was a great year for me because of some stuff that went on, with the sport and some recognition that I got. So that was fun, but that was also, so like that expo declined, but they had 3 events in 3 days. You know what I mean? Like, so they at least had a lot of action for those nights. Like now it's power slap.
Yeah.
And they had the grappling.
Used to be Invicta. I remember Invicta was going on at what was that? Where was it?
They had Invicta at the Cosmopolitan. And then they had the UFC.
That's right.
They had the Invicta on Thursday, and then Friday night was Fight Night, Alvarez versus Dos Anjos for the belt. And then
the pay-per-view on Saturday.
Or no, I'm confusing the two.
You are, because
2015 was Invicta before the Conor Mendes fight. 2016 they had Dos Anjos Alvarez on Thursday night. They had Joanna Claudia on Friday night, and they had UFC 200 on Saturday night. I mean, that for those specifically 2016 for a fight fan, there was not three.
Yeah, and I got invited to the 2016 one, UFC 200. I got invited to the Red Rock Casino for the Fight Pass party that me and the woman I was with at the time were even in their little promo video that she buzz cutted a freaking UFC in the side of her head, which is why we're not together anymore. but like you know, and that's where I met Eric Winter face to face. I mean, the coolest guy in the fight business, Eric Winter, who helped me out so much after that with writing gigs and stuff like that. I mean, and I still talk to him now. And I mean, that was literally at that party was when we all started finding out about John Jones not fighting at the event, and they opened up the open bar. It was supposed to be like it was like a 2 drinks free, and then you had to pay for the rest. And then Winter came and sat down, and he's like, "Yeah, drinks are on the house for the rest of the night." And he was like, "Have you looked at your phone?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Don't look at your phone." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Look at your phone." And then I looked, and I saw the news, and I was like, "Oh boy." Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see the parties. I'm sure they existed, right? But it wasn't as in your face as it used to be in the past. And maybe it was all down by the convention center. I did not go to the expo. I thought about going down to it, and then time just caught up and decided that there was other things.
You probably didn't miss anything.
Yeah. I probably did. You know, just to report on this podcast, it would have been nice to perhaps walk around.
I mean, as a Vegas resident, Antoine Willis is asking, do you guys think you'll ever have an NBA team? I feel like they should have everything by now.
I mean, I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
They got the baseball stadium coming in. So I just think it's a matter of time. I just think the NBA is at a point right now where they're not quite completely sure about expansion and diluting the talent that's on the teams. I think considering you have so many champions over the last 10-year period, I think that they're probably happy with the parity right now. So I don't know if they want to throw that off. But I do think within the next 10 years, I think you'll probably see a team in NBA, and I think, or in Vegas, and I think you'll probably see the second team to keep the league even, probably back up in Seattle to replace the Supersonics. Getting back to the fight. So getting back to you meant before we went on the air, you mentioned Gregory Rodriguez, Jack Hermanson, brutal knockout. Probably was the knockout of the year for about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's Herb Dean. Herb Dean allows the little extra shot to come in at the end. Always a step slow. I figured the fight ended at 4:19.
You want to know what's funny?
He needed to get somewhere by 4:20, and that was kind of why he stopped the fight. No joke. He was actually stopped at 4:19. When I looked at,
you want to know what's funny though? Because I doubt you heard this in the arena, or maybe you did, but the commentary team was even like, we'll get in there. What was your, what's the holdup, ref? And then like from another angle, they show where he just briefly pulled on his hips, and he's like, oh, okay, he did try to get in there, but after you and I talking about Herb Dean so often, I was like, did he really though? But yeah,
we've seen it a million times. The good referees are willing to put their bodies in the way of danger. He could, most people, like Herzog and some of those guys would have been diving in the front of that punch.
Yeah.
Whereas dragging a guy away from behind who's 225 pounds, he didn't even feel him around the waist.
Chucking his hips back a little.
In the momentum, the crowd's cheering, crowd's going nuts at that point. He ain't hearing the referee. The only thing at that point, the referee needs to do the old John McCarthy and basically just dive on the dead body on the ground, And
it was a little scary. I mean, because from my perception, I don't know how long he was on the ground, but it seemed like a while.
Long time. And I don't know. Okay. Listen, as somebody who's watched this sport, somebody who enjoyed Tank Abbott's and Dan Henderson's flying
Yeah.
hell, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be a hypocrite because there's been some late shots that I was like, oh shit, that was fucking
Yeah.
wild. You know, as I get older, I feel like there has to be some kind of responsibility on the fighters that you can't just throw that punch. And I know that the referee needs to, and they say fight till the referee stops it. Well, listen, there's got to be a level to it, right? Like, that was late. He stood over his body, looked down at him, made a mental choice to then throw like the hardest physical punch he could.
Yeah.
At
No,
his
there are. I
lifeless
mean,
body.
we don't know what's going on in the heat of the moment, but there have been fighters too that, I mean, you know, how many fighters with the walk off KO is a term because of the fighters that recognize, I just shut this guy off. There's nothing left for me to do. But
in other sports, you can't do that though. In football,
yeah.
there's the late hit and stuff like that. You can't just be like, well, I was in the middle of football and I decided to murder the guy after the, you know, like, I mean, let's put it this way. Eventually someone is going to pass away inside the octagon. It is an inevitability that is going to happen sometime in the history of the sport. Let's pray to God it does not happen from a shot like that. Because if it happens from a shot like that, I think it's hard to rebound.
Yeah,
I think
especially now. Yeah.
You know, I think
because
it would be hard.
There's been a lot of deaths in boxing, and I guess people are just, you know, whatever with boxing, but the UFC's got so much attention, and Dana White's whole politicization because of all his Trump stuff, and you know what I mean? Like, if something like that were to happen now, people, it would be, like you said, hard to rebound. Yeah.
And I don't mean if somebody just passes away in a fight because something tragic happens, that's one thing. But for it to be a late shot like that, that's going to be shown all over ESPN. I mean, you would start to get to the point where you'd go, are we charging this guy? And I know that that's crazy, and I coming through my mind is even nuts. But at some point, there's got to be a responsibility that you can't just. Once the guy's out, I mean, I don't know how you do it. I don't know, and I don't want the sport to be pussified. Yeah. But if it happens in the action, in boxing, listen, we don't see a guy knock out a guy in boxing and then dive down on him and fucking elbow him in the face when he's unconscious. Yeah. If that happened in a boxing match and the guy died, you're damn well that would be a big thing for, you know. I even don't even like talking about this because I understand what the sport is and the dangers of it, but I just thought that was late. I thought that was really, really, really late. And I thought it was I mean, we haven't seen a late shot like that in, I mean, maybe Henderson versus Hector Lombard. But even that was like not that. It was an diving elbow after, you know, following the guy to the ground, not so much standing over the body, looking down on him and then throwing a straight punch down to the ground. Had Rodriguez dived on him, after, you know, as he's going down, that's a different story. He doesn't know he's unconscious at that point, and there's a lot going on. But listen, I'm not judging Rodriguez personally either. I just think that there's going to become a point where there's got to be some kind of fine or suspension to at least try to, you know, stop the honest ones. You know, you're always going to have the psycho out there who's going to go for that shot, but you got to have the guys that are clear thinking need to know that probably I shouldn't throw that. That might be a $50,000 fine. Or you know, in the UFC's case, a $5,000 fine, because that's the equivalent of the purses. But I don't know. But that just an incredible knockout. I talked about storylines. Listen, Rodriguez has a couple big knockouts in a row now. He's got the highlight reels now. He's at a weight class middleweight that is kind of all over the place. I think that's a great movement for that. I think the UFC. I think him winning was much better than Hermansson winning. For the future of the middleweight division. You have a contender now who's just on the biggest pay-per-view of the year, the last one on ESPN or ESPN Plus, or whatever the heck it was airing on, and he got a spectacular knockout. So I think that that's good. We move on to the first fight of the main card, Peyton Talbot. Again, tough fight, showed heart, won a fight that I thought he was going to lose, and did it after, you know, perhaps losing the second round of the fight where he needed to come back and show it. And he did. I think that's great for the UFC. I think a guy that they've kind of hyped up, put on pay-per-views, gets a win. He's a young kid, got a good attitude. You know, I don't have anything against the guy. I don't think he's a future champion per se necessarily,
Mhm.
but I do think he's somebody that can help move the sport forward in a positive fashion. Big win for him. Dariush Moicano, pretty much nail biter to the end, about as close as you can get.
Yeah.
Dariush squeaks it out. Doesn't really doesn't hurt Moicano per se. He's already got a few
No.
losses. He'll go on. Fans
No, but
love
I
him.
didn't think he had it in him. I'll be honest. I didn't. I remember when we did our picks. I thought Moicano was going to take it. So I'm glad. I'm kind of glad it was as close as it was.
It's a good fight. Dariush gets a good win. He proves that he's a guy that we'll talk about in the future. He's may not win the championship, but he's going to be one of those guys where you're going to go, man, he had a pretty damn good career for somebody that most people probably would have thought he would have washed out after the first couple of fights of his, you know what I mean? Like, he just doesn't have the look of somebody that you would think would be, and he goes in there and he does the job, and he's a professional fighter. Nice win for him. Give him another showcase fight. Let him kind of, basically his next loss is probably the end of his career. So if you want to give him a big fight until that point happens, I have no issue with that. Then we get to the fight of the night, fight of the year. One of the top 10 fights I've ever seen in person. And that might even be top 5. I mean, it was a barn burner from start to finish between Joshua Van, Brandon Royval. Royval came out. There really wasn't a moment where you were like confident who was winning. I thought Royval was winning until the last 10 seconds of the fight. I thought he was going to win 2 rounds to 1. And then he gets dropped, just going rock'em sock'em robots
I'm surprised that Van had that in him, especially fighting so soon. That was one of the reasons I didn't pick him outside of Royval being on this podcast and all that. But I was just surprised that it went the way that it did, and even. I forgot. I know Dana White gave Royval a bonus just because of how good the fight was, and not just the fight of the night, but like I think he said he was giving him his win bonus and everything too, just because of what they
talked about, the risk he was taking, fighting an unranked fighter, and going out there and fighting the way he did.
Mm-hmm.
He might have been able to grab onto Van, hold on to him, and win a boring decision. He very well might have been able to do that, but the way he went out there and fought, I mean, it was rock'em sock'em. They were hitting each other with bombs, and I mean,
for a guy that idolized Miguel Torres, I mean, I can't be surprised.
No, and I'm not surprised. I'm surprised. The only thing I'm surprised about Royval is how well his chin held up, and not that he has a weak chin or ever thought he had a weak chin, but he was taking some shots, and finally the last one did drop him, but he didn't go out. He rebounded. He was able to kind of defend himself for the last couple seconds. Just a great fight, a fun fight. I don't necessarily like Van jumping like 12 spots to the number 1 ranking, but here's the thing, man. He's hot. The crowd loves the guy. He's got the highlight reels now. I talk about it all the time about needing some squash matches occasionally. This guy's getting them without necessarily having to have squash matches. This guy's getting some great highlights. And fight of the year, I'm all for him. I don't think he can beat Pantoja, but listen, it's fresh, it's new, and it's a fight that I will watch and pay for if it's Van and Pantoja. And I don't know if I've said that many times about the flyweight division, but it was fun, really, really, really fun to watch. And I'm all about it now. Both these guys. The minute the fight ended, I was like, can we get a Moreno Figueiredo deal out of these guys? Like, if this is what they're going to bring me, then let me watch it.
If they fight again, it's main event for whatever. If they do, if they ever see each other again, it's going to be a main event.
If Van were to go on and beat Pantoja, I think
we don't know if Van can wrestle. I don't think anybody cares.
I mean, I don't think it matters
after the way he's been performing. Yeah, might be the hole in his game, but you never know.
It's and the reason why I would pick Pantoja, because from what I've seen, Pantoja, the guy is a stud and gets better and better every fight. Now he's finishing guys. I mean, you have a chance to really build off some of these guys if the UFC is willing to promote them. I feel like we need these guys. I want to see these guys on the gas station stalls again and all that stuff. I used to see these guys in monster ads at the gas stations and I feel like now's the time. I want to see Van and Taporia and Pimblett and some of these guys getting a push. We need the new blood. The old blood, my generation, your generation is gone now. There is nobody left.
Pretty much.
And if you want to, sure, the younger fans, you can keep getting them, but if you want to keep some of the old heads around that maybe have a little bit more money, maybe willing to throw around a little bit more money, I think it's big to build up some guys that will attract.
Well, that's a good question. Einstein's asking, do you think that? I don't think it's better than Figueiredo Moreno 1. Is it a Hall of Fame fight? I mean, again, we just saw it, so it's hard to argue against it, but I think time will tell. With most of these fights, I think history designates fights that become Hall. Like you look at what they just gave out with Adesanya and Kelvin Gastelum. Like I've been citing that fight since it happened. And so the fact that it finally hit I don't remember when it happened, but it took years for them to get the Hall of Fame accolades that they got, and it matters. It just matters. Time matters. I think the fights that stick in your mind is what will designate a fight as a Hall of Fame worthy fight, and like that one was, and this one could be.
I mean, it's hard to say. First of all, I was in the arena. So the arena experience watching the fight is much different, obviously, than watching on television. I'm rolling with the crowd. I am, we might be cheering for some punches that don't necessarily land because I can't quite tell from where, you know what I mean? There's definitely a different perspective. I think as far as Hall of Fame fights go, I think there's a couple of factors. I think one is obviously how long the fight holds up. I think how long we show it, how many times there is broadcasts of it. Is there a, you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of that, I think the other thing is where these guys go with their career. If Van goes on to beat Pantoja and become a champion in the UFC, this fight's definitely a Hall of Fame fight because it will be the fight that created the star that he becomes. If Royval different, he lost the fight, but I do think that this could become one if it goes on to be a part of the story of Van's career. I also think it will be promoted the hell out of when they're doing Van Pantoja. They'd be stupid not to have highlights of this fight all over the damn thing, along with his other knockouts. So I do think it's going to carry some leverage, but I do think it depends on Van's career. I'm trying to think of the Hall of Fame fights. The only Hall of Fame fights that I can think of off the top of my head that didn't involve like a champion was Choi and Swanson. But Swanson fought in the UFC for 15, almost 20 years now, and he's just been and he's put up war after war, and he's been there. His wife did the pride thing.
McDonald for a title fight? I don't remember if that
Which
was
one?
Lawler McDonald.
Oh yeah. That was Lawler defending his belt.
Yeah.
That he had won from Hendricks. Their first fight wasn't a title fight, but that one was in the Hall of Fame. Their second fight was a title fight, and is from what was 190,
189.
189. There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'd have to watch it over again to really break down that. Is it a Hall of Fame worthy fight? I think it's probably one of the top 50 fights in UFC history. So we're and that's just throwing out a random number, but I would say that's probably fair. I would have a hard time finding 49 fights that I thought were a lot better than it. And from like I said, sitting in the crowd, it's probably a top 10 fight for me, and that was my 66th UFC event in person. So it's definitely one of those. Maybe not a top 10 meaningful fight, but as far as just the action of nonstop bell to bell, I can't think of many other than like McDonald Lawler, which was a 5-rounder. As far as a 3-round fight goes, it was banger start to start for 15 minutes. And I look forward to where Van's able to go. We mentioned Pantoja dominated Kai Kara France start to finish, finished him off. No surprise. Probably the least surprise of the whole night, honestly, for me. And then the main event, Topuria just lays a slaughter.
It went as I expected. It just happened a lot sooner than I expected.
I hate, I don't want to be the guy who says like legacies are tarnished, but it was definitely a questionable. It kind of reminded me of Fedor deciding to stand in front of Bader, bro, like it's like, what are you doing? Like,
or Holly Holm clinching with Kayla Harrison.
There you go. Like, there's a decision making. So, like, I wonder, like, if I keep thinking if I'm Oliveira's coaches, I go, dude, let's grab this dude. Like, we're the all-time submission guy in the UFC. Like, we're really going to go into a title fight and never even at once try to grab the guy? Like, I know it only lasted a minute and a half or whatever, but that's just in my head is like, dude, we don't try to push the guy up against the cage. We don't try to use our size. I mean, he came out through some kicks and stuff, but all he did was stay in the pocket. And it's like, you know, I think he'll probably be the last guy that does that. I don't think you're going to see many guys fighting Topuria or going forward who are just going to stand there and try to bang with.
No, that's the thing though. If you do it too often and early in the night, during the broadcast, during the ESPN prelims, they were doing breakdowns of the way the fighters fight, and it's already something that's noted, the way that his whole style with the way he throws hands, and they did a really good breakdown, Cormier, on his little teleprompter thing, and that was one of the things. So he might he definitely, now that he is who he is, people are already seeing the patterns, and that's the thing about martial arts. You know, you always talk about making someone fight your fight, and he makes people fight his fight, but then there's going to be people that are going to see what his fight is and try to coax him, away from that. So we'll see. I mean, he's on top of the world now, but we've already seen in this sport, the crowns have been changing more often than they ever have lately.
I mean, him and Islam is a fight definitely for the ages at this point. You know what I mean? That's basically Conor Khabib 2. I mean, that's as close as we'd ever get to a mirror image of that match. Again, I just keep your nose clean, guys. Like, this sport, like, you know what I mean? Like,
where is that coming from? I'm just curious. Is it because of all the other? Is it because of McGregor, John Jones?
Yeah, basically, it's because all of the stars, I just want to make sure, like, are just, like, there's nobody to want to root for. I don't want to root for Conor McGregor. I root for him to lose. I root for John Jones to lose. Now, there's something to that. I get, it's the wrestling heel thing, I guess. But, like, I'm always with people, and that's how I used to defend McGregor. People would go, McGregor's an idiot. And I'd say, you know what? He might be an idiot, but he hasn't been arrested yet. He hasn't fucking murdered anybody. And then sure as shit, it takes 24 hours. 24 hours later, I look like I don't know what I'm talking about. He's getting arrested, or he's got his name on every newspaper. And and then you got John Jones.
Allegedly sexually assaulted X, Y, and Z's.
I mean, you got BJ Penn now, who thinks his mom's an alien. You've got, like, I'm just like, I just want to be like, can anybody?
Can we have a Wheaties guy again? Yeah.
I mean, I have mad love for a guy like Chuck Liddell, who just kind of sits on the sideline, does his little thing, and gives a thumbs up to the crowd, and is there to sign some autographs, and really, like, great, just do it. A lot of those veterans are out there doing it. Matt Hughes, some of these guys are just around there, they're just hanging out, and Matt Hughes has a past that a lot of people aren't real happy about, but I want the sport to grow, and I want there to be people to root for, and I want there to be people that I can tell, like, call up a relative and be like, you need to watch this fight, and not have the fight end and have the guy start dropping F-bombs, and you know what I mean, or just come off. And when I say F-bombs, I'm not meaning fuck. I'm saying the other word that really can offend people and set people off. Listen, I'm not offended by much in this world, but there's a lot of people who are. And if you want the sport to grow, you can't constantly be pounding them with stuff that doesn't fit with their world, and that's just my opinion on it. It would be nice. It would be fun to be able to go to events smiling and go, that's Paddy Pimblett, and he's defending the belt against Michael Chandler, who's another good dude. You know what I mean? Like, not obviously now, but the Chandler of 10 years ago, where it was like, okay, now, and not that he's a bad dude now, but you get what I'm saying. I want, it just seemed, well, we get Adesanya fight, and somebody's talking about him sleeping with his animals and stuff. Like, we just can't go anywhere. It's like every step of the way. Duplessis fighting Adesanya, and it's like a race war, and it's like, do we really have to go this? Like, it gets old for me. And I as somebody whose favorite athletes in the sport are Brazilian or Russian or foreign athletes, like, let's just stay away from that stuff. We get Khabib and we get, that's why if we get Islam and Topuria, are we going to talk about incest and other stupid shit. Like, let's just let the two dudes talk about defend their resumes and go in the cage. That's what I miss. I miss just the guys who are professional fighters that are friendly, and then they walk in and do it. So that's my rant. But it was a great event. I got to give UFC props where props are due. They put the card together. I didn't know it was
it's
going to be
nice to have a co-main and main event actually have finishes instead of going to decision or something too. You know, I think that's kind of a cherry topper when that happens on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think so. And it lets everybody leave the arena. Everybody's listen, no matter who you were rooting for, you walk out of there kind of in awe of what you just saw. And I think that's something that always attracts people. I heard people walking out of the arena saying that was the coolest thing that they've ever seen in their life. And I had talked about people saying that walking out of slap fight last time when I went to slap fight, but this was the first time in a long time I left a UFC event, and I heard people just praising it. And I'm sure I'm in my bubble. You know, I'm not saying that that's not every event. Somebody's not saying that. But for a big pay-per-view in Vegas, this was a fun one to watch. This was a fun one to be at. And I enjoyed it from start to finish. So props to the UFC for 317. That's all I can say. 318's card, a little bit shaky on. I like the main event, obviously, but we'll move on to that when that event comes closer. But that doesn't mean the fights aren't going to be great. And, you know, there's some stuff. But I did like how this one unfolded. I think the people that won was important for the UFC. I think for the UFC, it was a great night because there's stuff set up. Dana White cannot like Paddy Pimblett in the cage. Listen, that fight sells out pay-per-view, sells out any arena in the world.
I feel like when he gets upset of stuff like that, I feel like it's because it's ruining some sort of.
He didn't get to break the news.
Yeah. Kind of like the Lesnar thing with Hunt, like all that. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't get the money from Instagram for posting it. You know what I mean? Like that's obviously a lot what it is. The control factor with him is obviously a huge thing. So I think that's about wrapping it up.
Before my battery dies on my camera.
You know, good. There is PFL action this weekend, July 4th and 5th. I believe there's both a PFL event, international, the MENA events. But I think with their new PFL app, I think those are all accessible now. Don't quote me on that, but I do believe that was the case last time. So there is some action this week. Don't know the cards off the top of my head, but if you're sitting around getting ready to watch fireworks, drinking a beer, there's definitely access to some fights.
Yeah. Just next week we're probably not on just because I might have some scheduling issues, so we'll be back the week of the 26th, which is the one for the RDR Whitaker in Saudi Arabia, so that's the weekend after next. Hopefully.
I think that's 2 weeks down the line, but we'll let everybody know. And as we said earlier, there's work summer schedules and stuff, and some other stuff throwing off our normal planned time. So just something that we'll have to deal with for the next couple of weeks, but that'll come to an end, and then we should be back to our normal every week Wednesday night schedule. I think that's about it. Everybody stay safe this weekend. Don't blow your fingers off. Stay away from the fireworks. It's hard to hold a beer with no fingers on your hand. So so let's drink beer, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the 4th of July, and everybody be safe. And we'll be talking to you soon. Have a good night.